Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I wanted to go over a topic that I think some people were asking about, and there was a lot of different variables to it. And I wanted to give my perspective as somebody who predominantly sees couples and individuals who have an insecure attachment type as a therapist. And the question is, are people with insecure attachment more likely to remain single or struggle to get in relationships or stay in a healthy marriage? The answer is yes. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why. And so, a lot of times when people are insecurely attached, it comes from different facets of their life, but it usually starts in childhood. And then some of these childhood experiences can sometimes shape their relationship with others throughout, which continues to add on that trauma. So I'm going to give an example of somebody, let's say they're fearful avoidant, because those individuals tend to have more trauma based on the adverse childhood experiences scale. So for example, let's say there's a lot of volatility in the home, but at the same time, a lot of hidden meaning, a lot of things that are very indirect. Maybe there's a lot of jealousy. Maybe there's a lot of hatred, sometimes violence, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It's very confusing. And so let's just say it's a girl. We have a female little girl kid, and that's her life. And then she goes to elementary school, and then let's say some boys are bullying her. In her mind, she already distrusts people, whether she realizes it or not. And so now she's going to take this much more seriously or severely. Or she might think that this is normal behavior, and she might allow people to bully her or mistreat her more, which is now adding to the trauma. Now, let's say this little girl, she's in high school now, and there's a guy who's not very mentally healthy, not his fault, but maybe he says like, yeah, my parents are not healthy, my dad's very aggressive, he comes from that environment where he thinks maybe violence is more common. He feels frustrated all the time. He's skipping school. He's leaning into other bad behaviors. And this girl, teenager, is now she doesn't know that this is abnormal because maybe her mom and her dad were like that to some extent. So she thinks maybe they're connecting on a different level and they're different than the other high school kids and they are in love, and they might have been. But as they grow, their attachment issues are showing up more often, and maybe he does become aggressive towards her. Maybe there is some DV and she's afraid to leave. She doesn't know what to do. And both of their attachment styles are becoming more and more prominent. This example, likely they're both fearful avoidant, for example, but we're not sure, just giving examples. And they're bouncing off their attachment styles and becoming more and more prominent in being insecurely attached rather than secure. But from a very early age, it started when she was very little. But now this relationship has shaped her even more. Now she's even more afraid, and she doesn't even know what relationships are supposed to look like or love. And a person who is secure is able to recognize, okay, let's say it was a secure girl in high school. She would think, okay, I feel bad for this, this guy, but I don't feel like he's a good fit for me because we have a different upbringing. We come from different families. He seems very negative, and I don't feel like that's worth it for my life, right? Another girl who's insecurely attached might not see it like that. And so these things add up. And so that's usually the formula for why this stuff is occurring. And so the first reason that people who are insecurely attached, why they struggle with relationships or they might remain single for longer or be in and out of relationships, is they tend to have more trauma than secure folks. As we discussed, trauma is a fundamental perspective of why these things come from. And safety is a fundamental feeling and attribute for secure attachment. And so individuals who don't have that necessarily as prominently, in of itself, is trauma, right? Trauma is, to some extent, when you should have had something from a psychological perspective and you didn't, or you shouldn't have had something and it did occur, right? One of these others or both. And so these individuals their life is shaped based on that trauma. And so it's hard because they're not used to sometimes so little variables. If you're in a relationship and it's secure, there are less variables to look at and treat than two individuals who are insecurely attached. Two people who are secure, maybe they're struggling with some marital issues in the bedroom. Maybe it's like they're struggling because their their teenage daughter is becoming an adult and they don't know what college she wants to go to. They're worried about her. So these are some of the issues they might come up in couples therapy, for example. Someone who's insecurely attached, an insecure couple, they might start coming up with anger. They might start coming up with fear of being cheated on. One of them might feel like the other person is too overwhelming. The other person might feel like doesn't care enough. And so all these variables are showing up, whereas the secure couple, we didn't see that many variables. And that comes from that trauma. The next one is insecure individuals tend to be less trusting, but interesting enough, sometimes more trusting when they shouldn't be. And so they tend to be less trusting because they've learned that giving too much trust, which is what they may have done originally, really hurt them. So they have an interesting relationship with trust. They don't know when to give it and when to withhold it, when to hold on to it and see if it's worth giving. They don't learn that as much because they didn't see that modeled in their childhood. And as they went on in life, they only picked up more trauma, or they tended to. And so they learned different strategies for trust that might be more maladaptive. The next one is that they tend to have less healthy relationship models. Now, I want to stop on this one because there's a couple things I want to talk about. Some of them may have not grown up in a two-parent home. Some of them may have grown up with their grandparents. They may have been in foster care, so they might not know what healthy love and relationships look like. But it also might be they have strained relationships with lots of people in their life because their family maybe started out in a strained situation and they didn't know that that was abnormal. So maybe they don't know how to repair relationships or have proper conflict repair because they didn't learn it when they were younger. But there's another part of this too. Individuals who are insecurely attached, what I've noticed is they tend to be drawn to media that is a little bit more unhealthy for a relationship model. So for example, a person who might be healthy might be actually more interested in watching movies that have maybe some people like drama. I don't like drama. I don't even understand it sometimes, to be honest. But sometimes it's like they might be drawn to like a very dark or painful relationship in a movie or a show. Whereas another person, maybe they're securely attached. They like drama, but they're not too drawn to the drama itself. And they still might prefer movies with a little bit more healthy romance or healthy relationships or things like that. Whereas a person who's insecurely attached, they might be very drawn to those more unique or specific cases. The next one is actually that they may have unhealthy beliefs about love, relationships, and marriage. Actually, the media concept that we're talking about is common too. They might feel like, I don't know, abusers, they can change, and some do actually, but it's tricky, and you really do need somebody who's actually they're being treated by a mental health professional. It's really hard for them to do it outside. But in these movies and this media, it's like, I don't know, this one girl he fell in love with and he mistreated her, but then one day he changed for her type of thing. I don't know. I don't read stuff like that. I'm aware of the theme, but I don't read it, so I probably botched that a little bit. But I hope you guys get what I'm talking about. Those types of beliefs about love shapes the way that they believe because they didn't see marriage in a healthy way when they were little. So sometimes they have their understanding of marriage from unhealthy sources or sources that don't fit our life or lifestyle. The next one is they may avoid relationships due to fear. And so because they've had so much trauma, they may literally remain single because they don't want a relationship. And this is more common with avoidantly attached individuals. And this is unfortunate because relationships based on research actually benefit both male and female in a lot of ways if it's healthy. And so these are some of the ways that people who are insecurely attached can actually stay single, remain more single for longer periods of time, or stay in unhealthy relationships. And so let's go ahead and summarize and we'll wrap it up. They tend to have more trauma. They tend to be less trusting. They tend to have less healthy relationship models or role models. They may have unhealthy beliefs about love, relationships, and marriage, and they actually may avoid relationships altogether. I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.